Every time we practice a tide exercise, we will be utilizing three different techniques, also known as the three translations of the tide. And these different translations will allow us to focus on different parts of the spine, the lower, the middle, and the upper part of the spine. So before we start talking about the exercises, let's get to know these techniques or translations first. In translation number 1, my goal is to pull my chest as far forward as I can by extending the spine and as far back as I can by flexing the spine. You'll also notice that as I'm doing this, I am opening and closing my arms. And there's a very simple reason as to why I'm doing that. It is because movement facilitates movement. When I open up my arms, it's easier for me to extend the spine. When I close my arms, it is easier to flex the spine. And the opposite is true as well. If you flex your spine, it's going to be easier to close the arms. If you arch your spine, it's going to be easier to open up the arms. So we are going to allow ourselves to do that. The first translation will also allow us to focus more on the lower part of the spine. In translation number 2, we're going to do the same thing, chest forward and chest back, but this time we're going to try to prevent our heads from moving forward and backwards. And this will allow us to focus more on the middle part of the spine. The last translation is translation number 3. Here our goal is to aim our chest up and down. And this will allow us to focus more on the upper part of the spine. One thing you have to pay attention to here is that when you aim your chest down, you want to make sure that there's as much distance between your chest and the floor as possible. You want to keep your lower and middle part of your spine upright so you don't slump over or hinge at the hips. So those are the 3 different translations. Translation number 1, chest forward, chest back. Translation number 2, chest forward and back without moving the head forward and back. And translation number 3, chest up and chest down without slumping over. Now let's start talking about the exercise itself, the seated tide. The seated position allows us to move in a very stable environment. We have a huge base of support and it's going to be very difficult for us to fall over. And the stable environment effectively reduces the amount of noise in the movement. Whenever we move, we are bombarded by a massive amount of noise. That noise could be discomfort, it could be fatigue, it could be instability, it could be not understanding what you're trying to accomplish, or it could be the massive amount of sensations that you experience as you're moving and when you're trying to accomplish a very specific something. Now that something that you're trying to accomplish, that is the signal. And the more noise we have, the harder it is to find the signal. So the reason we're starting off practicing our tide in the seated position is simply because it will allow us to focus more on this signal, the extension and the flexion of the spine, and the 3 different translations.